Welcome to Beyond the Reiki Gateway, a podcast reserved for the spiritually curious. Journey further with Reiki Masters Kathleen Johnson and Andrea Kennedy through in-depth conversations, many featuring inspiring and intriguing special guests to enrich your unique spiritual progression.
Hello, everyone. Kathleen Johnson here with my co-host Andrea Kennedy. And today we're welcoming back a really special guest, Jodie Helm. You may remember that we had Jodie on in season 2, episode 17, and that aired in May of this year, 2022. And Jodie is so amazing because she channels the Archangels. This all came about after she became a Reiki master. And she did that after she retired from teaching. So one thing led to another. She retired, she became a Reiki master, and becoming a Reiki master, Jodie has always said, that opened her up to channeling the Archangels, which is what she does all the time now, to everyone's delight. She writes prolifically on medium.com. You can read her wonderful articles there. In fact, that's how we found Jodie, on medium.com. She's also working on a book, and I hope that comes out soon because I can't wait to read it. And she's just an all-around wonderful person. And Jodie, I am so happy to welcome you back.
Well, it's so nice of you to invite me back. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, we're really thrilled, Jodie. And we're coming in here as we're recording at the end of the year. And we just thought it would be an extra special time to welcome you and hear what the Archangels have been talking about and what's been on a lot of people's minds lately, at least what I'm reading out there and what I'm hearing. We'll get your take on it. But what about the shift? People call it different things. I know you call it the shift. I'm wondering about this topic and what you're hearing from the Archangels lately. Would you mind getting started there?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, the shift, if anyone doesn't know what it is just the movement of Earth into a higher dimension. We've been in the third dimension for, unless you were born 10 years or sooner ago, then we've all grown up in the third dimension. And that dimension is heavier. It has more limitations. It's based a lot on fear and survival. Now we're in a higher dimension, and with the higher dimension comes a higher consciousness that we're all kind of working on. And it can be a little disruptive at times. And so the angels talk about it a lot. A lot of it has to do with it's easier to get through something if you know what's going on and what you can do to smooth things out a little bit. So yes, the shift is huge right now.
Yeah. You talk about what people go through. What are some of the common, I don't know, would we call it symptoms of going through the shift?
That's as good a word as any. Well, there's a lot of energy going around on Earth right now. And it's all good energy. I mean, it's energies of healing. It's energies of love and light. They have positive effects. But if you don't know what's going on, you feel something's different, but you're not sure what it is, then it can be confusing. A lot of us are seeing things that have always been there, but we didn't really notice them as much. Social injustice, inequalities, that kind of thing. They've always been there and we've all known about it, but now it's bothering us more because we're rising in consciousness. That alone is very disconcerting for some people because they don't know why all of a sudden they're really bothered by this kind of thing. Also, there's a lot of healing energy. And what that does is it triggers some bad memories that people still need to heal from. That's going to keep prodding us. I mean, a lot of us maybe haven't thought of these things in years because it's not fun to think about bad times or hard times. And so a lot of people don't. A lot of people are getting dreams. They're having memories pop up. They are remembering things that happened long ago, but that they've never really processed so that they could heal. And the good news is it's easier and faster to heal right now than it ever has been. but it still takes a little bit of effort, and you kind of have to experience and process whatever pain you've been through or whatever trauma you've been through so that you can release it. The thing is, until you start working on that, you're going to keep being bothered by memories or dreams or what have you. That can be disconcerting. Also, feeling different and questioning things that you've never questioned before. And this might be religious beliefs. It might be things that you thought were okay. And now all of a sudden you're thinking that this is not okay. A lot of that societal systems in place that have just always been there, and no one really had much to say about it. Here in the United States, we trust our politicians a lot of times to make the decisions. And now we're seeing that some of that is not reflecting what we want. So we're noticing all these things that we hadn't necessarily noticed before. And the energy that we're surrounded with is much higher. So those kinds of things are going to keep bothering us until we start doing something about them.
What I've noticed, Jodie, is that it seems overall sensitivity is rising, the
Definitely.
collective's sensitivity.
Yes.
And I guess that could go right back to the energy that has been flooding the planet now for some time.
It all comes back to the energy.
Exactly.
And well, you guys know this, being Reiki masters yourself, energy affects everything. And now we're getting bombarded with all this positive energy, but it's still a little new. And so we're processing it. It makes you feel different. And, a lot of us are stuck in that third dimension mindset where if we don't understand something, we're afraid. And so we're all in transition. And for myself, since I've been channeling, I'm much more sensitive to energy. And so I can feel some individual energy, not specifically, but I can see whether or not I want to be around this person any longer, that kind of thing. But now I also feel the collective energy. At times I'll wake up and I'm feeling off and I don't know why. And then it clicks that it's the collective energy that I'm feeling. So that takes a while to get used to. And you know what? Everyone is going to be more sensitive to energy. I mean, some people are discovering psychic gifts that they never knew they had. I haven't always been able to channel the angels. I do now, but I didn't realize that I was able to do that until it really happened. So all of these things are affecting us. And I think it helps to know why we're feeling different.
I completely agree, Jodie. And I'm really happy that you brought up the idea of the collective and also the idea that we're being bombarded, really. And I'm going to say bathed because I just like that better.
Oh, that's so much nicer than bombarded.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that feels so much better.
With this positive energy. And I think it's really fascinating because it makes sense then that we would get, I think you used the word triggered before, or perhaps more aware of issues and things, because being in that sea of positive energy, the contrast of what we've been carrying.
Right. Big difference.
Yeah. In that context, that contrast, oh my goodness, it makes us uncomfortable, right? And it's that place of the discomfort that allows us to become aware of those traumas, those things that we still need to heal. So then we can shine the light there, as you alluded to, which I think is so powerful. So to me, the contrast is really key here. And it helps us hone in on where we've been. But then you mentioned what we've been seeing. So whether it's politicians or institutions or whatever, things that we were fine with before, we just kind of went along.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're not. Well, because I think, again, it's the contrast, right? It's this waking up to the awareness.
It's definitely an awakening.
Yeah.
And you're right. we are being bathed in this energy. And it's not that it's harmful or that it hurts, but it is different. And it's a big contrast. Also, we're getting a lot more energy from the earth. The earth is trying to heal. And so you'll notice we have a lot more natural disasters, and a lot of them are more serious and more intense than they have been. It's part of a healing process with the earth. So we get that energy too. And actually, that's really great energy to tap into. It's the easiest and most available energy. And what happens is when you visualize the earth and ground to the earth and want to connect, it's the easiest connection you can probably get. And as you're thinking of healing the earth is also healing you. So it's an exchange. It's not just you trying to do your part. It's the earth everyone's trying to do their part. And then what happens is people become awakened to this stuff and they exude this energy. So the angels say, you don't have to do anything to help people along. Just be there and they will sense your energy and it will help jumpstart their awakening. It's not just energy coming from within Earth and outside Earth. It's coming from all of us. The more you awaken to this and the more you're aware, the more that you can affect everyone around you without doing a thing, just being.
I love that.
It's a kick and it's really neat. But again, it's different. And a lot of people don't know what to do with that different.
And I love the simplicity of that.
Yeah, the being is the part I like. And it's something that I talk about in my practice is instead of doing Reiki, to use Reiki as an example, just allow yourself to be Reiki. And then that energy, just as you said, exudes from the individual.
Right.
And it touches everything and everyone in its path.
Exactly.
And that creates that ripple. It becomes an infinite ripple that just keeps going and going.
And building. It snowballs.
And building. Exactly.
It's nothing that you consciously do when you share energy, at least not for most of us. Now, you can make it more conscious. And there's lots of times I've sent healing energy to people through Reiki or with the earth or what have you. You can have that intent. But whether you have the intent or not, you share your energy and you share others' energy all the time. It's unavoidable.
Yeah, the intention there for me is to just allow my energy to flow outward and have the value with anyone who may need it. So it's just an overall general intention. I'm not focusing on any one individual.
Yes.
Anything like that. I am just letting it flow.
And sending out positive, loving energy of light without a face in mind works beautifully. It works more than you think. I try to make it a point every morning to send out loving energy just to the universe and the earth. And then in the evenings, I try to bond with the earth more to try to help that healing. So the sooner we can help that healing, the fewer natural disasters and it's all part of the healing process.
Right.
I wanted to add on, Kathleen, because I'm sure that this is part of what you are saying, but I just want to emphasize this one aspect. Not only are we emanating that energy, just putting it out there for whatever purpose, everything that we create then, everything that we engage with is imbued with that energy.
Right.
So if we create new institutions, if we create new ways of living, it's imbued with that energy automatically.
Exactly.
Right. And I'm so glad you brought that up because that's what happens. That's part of the effects of all this energy is you not only see the changes that need to be made, but you're inspired with ideas and more people are tapping into their gifts, their natural gifts that they were born with. And part of that is figuring out how you can use those gifts to help make the world a better place. And that's what needs to happen. We need to get more involved. And when I say that, some people panic and think, oh my God, I work full time. I have a family. I know we're all busy. Everybody is. But it's not about doing something you're uncomfortable with or doing something that someone tells you to do. It's this energy of you wanting to get involved in whichever way you're comfortable. Because, I mean, let's face it, none of us know everything, but all of us know something. So if we can combine our gifts and get together with like-minded people, then we're in a good place that we can make all kinds of things happen.
And it doesn't have to be grand gestures. You know,
No,
a lot of
not at
people
all.
think it has to be something that's momentous, a huge event, a huge accomplishment. I mean, that's all well and good. That's fine for some people. But for the majority of us, we go about our daily lives. We offer support to those who need it. We stand in service to others.
Sure. Or just like we said, sending out positive energy.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And I think it's one that is highly underrated.
Oh, sure.
Because if enough of us start doing that, we will have reached that tipping point where critical mass, where enough of us have that to really accelerate the change and really see some changes much faster. But it's up to us.
Yes. The angels always say, this was hard for me to accept in the beginning, that the angels consider us their equals because they have many gifts and powers that we do not have, but we also have things that they don't have, and they cannot make the changes on earth happen. We have to make them happen. And they've always said from the beginning that it's not going to be the governments and the politicians and the systems that fix things. It's going to be the masses. That's what we're starting to see more and more of.
You're right. We are. Slowly but surely, I'm seeing the changes. And I think those of us who are aware and paying attention to the shift are seeing that. I know I'm not only seeing it, but I'm feeling it. I don't know about you ladies, but oh my goodness. Especially in the past few months, the collective energy is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I have to stop sometimes and say, what is this that I'm feeling? Like you talked about a few minutes ago. Right? What is this mine? It's like, oh no, that's the collective energy. But it's so, so powerful these days.
That's how I can tell we're making progress, because in the beginning, when I felt collective energy, it was mostly negative. If something huge had happened, the Ukrainian war or the reversal of Roe or whatever, whenever there's a big response in the past, it's been negative energy that I'm feeling. But I'm starting to feel energy of unity. That's what we have to make happen. We have to work together. And that doesn't mean that we yell back at people who don't want change or get in an argument with them or anything like that. It just means we kind of bypass them. And instead of adding to that problem, that argument, we use our time and our effort and our energy to work on solutions. So that's another thing that angels say. Don't worry about the people who are not on board with this. They'll either come around to it or they won't. But in the end, there'll be a minority, and until they accept the new energy in place, they're going to be uncomfortable. Not that that's a good thing, but you kind of have to roll with this and be open to some change. And the things that have been acceptable in the past will no longer be acceptable in the future. So they say, don't get in a fight with anyone. Don't argue. Just use your time to think of solutions with like-minded people.
The saying, I think, is whatever you focus on expands. And so that makes perfect sense. You want to energize the goal, that unity.
Right. And, sometimes that's very hard to do. There are times when I am aggravated with individuals or systems or what have you. But what I've learned from the angels is if you wade into that, then what you're doing is you're adding to that negative energy. So the fact that you disagree with what they're doing, if you join in that argument, you're helping them with that negative energy. Whereas if you look at them, and I'm working very hard on this, if you look at them through a lens of love and light and you wish them well, doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean that you excuse their behavior or what have you. You just wish them well and peace, and then you go about your business. That adds to the positive energy. So not always easy. It really isn't always easy because people trigger me sometimes. They push my buttons sometimes, but I try to catch myself. And I'm really good about catching myself now. Eventually, I'm hoping I don't have to catch myself as often and back up a couple of steps and send out that positive energy instead of the negative. And that's how it works. Every time you catch yourself doing something that is negative, the very fact that you caught yourself is a victory.
It's like a mindfulness meditation.
Yes. All of that is connected. Prayer, meditation, all of that, Reiki, all of that is connected.
It is. It's an exercise in awareness. It's like, oh, look what I just did. And it's okay.
Right. And you just remind yourself, I'm not going there anymore. And then you back up and you go another direction.
Right. What you said about it's not easy, it isn't. But isn't that the point? It's not supposed to be easy, is it? And I think that goes back to what we spoke about earlier, that it's going to be uncomfortable. And all these things that trigger us or get us upset or angry or mad or just want to lash out, those are areas that we need to heal, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not supposed to be easy. Nothing about this is easy. You're talking about taking a planet and all of her inhabitants into another dimension. That in itself tells you this is not something that's going to happen overnight, especially considering that we've been in the third dimension for thousands and thousands of years.
Right.
Humans are very entrenched in the way they do things. And clearly it hasn't worked well for any of us.
Well, it's like any other bad habit. Bad habits are hard to break.
Right.
On the earth, the bad habit has always been fear. We live our lives based on fear. We take jobs that we don't really like because it offers security and we need that comfort zone so we won't be so afraid. And that's a very hard habit to break.
Absolutely. And I think that's what the point I'm trying to make is it's not supposed to be easy. And all this discomfort and anger and fear and the hatred that we get from all directions, from all kinds of people, that's just highlighting areas that need healing. So
yeah, and the media is great about highlighting all of those negatives, you know? I mean, it's no accident that we're bombarded through the media or all kinds of things, and they're meant to trigger us, not for good reasons, but because the new systems that will be created, it's not going to be a chosen handful of people that run the world. It's going to be everyone working together to run the world. The people in power don't like that. They like being the people in power. They instigate these wars between us and this polarity. That's not an accident.
No,
but the angels always say, you have a choice. We all have a choice to either be overwhelmed by that or to step back and remind ourselves that we're going to be okay. And we will be okay. It's just hard to break those habits of being afraid all the time.
Jodie, you mentioned more natural disasters and things like that. And it was some time ago, I made this observation. Maybe it's because I'm an eternal optimist. I don't know. But I find such hope, though, when we have these disasters, because what I see, through the media even, but you'll see the rescue efforts. For example, there's been a flood or something and people are stranded and they need rescuing. And here comes the boat of just everyday people and they stretch their hand out and the hands come together. And in that moment, there's a oneness and an acceptance. and nobody cares who voted for whom in the last election or where they stand on any issue. In that moment, humanity comes together and is celebrated. And I cling to that because it makes me wonder, are all of these natural disasters, in a way, invitations to healing for us?
Oh, yes. I think everything has a purpose. And a lot of times we don't know what the purpose is. Mass shootings, natural disasters, violence, all of that. I just lost my sister last week. I don't understand why all of these things happen, but I do trust that there's a purpose. And sometimes it's uncomfortable because I know that, for instance, someone who has a mass shooter, for instance, I can see and I can understand that this will lead to change and it will be positive change. That's not saying that it's okay. That's not saying that we need to do anything particular. It's just, it's the trust that I have in the angels and in my higher self that there's a purpose. There's a higher purpose. Everything has a reason for happening. Everything in our lives have a reason for happening. Our souls are the ones that plan our lives. We all have life plans. And sometimes I understand why things happen and sometimes I don't, but I trust that there's a reason.
And I think it really helps as we get older when you look at your life in the rear view, so to speak, and things that happened to you, years ago that you judged as being bad and terrible, don't look that way anymore. You go, I know why that happened. I can see now why that turned out the way it had, because if it had gone in the direction I hoped it would, I would be in a much worse place. And you just know that it happened for the best.
Yes. Hopefully, as we get older, we get wiser.
I hope.
And although I struggled at times and I didn't know why that was happening, I've never felt alone. I've never felt deserted. I've always felt that presence, that higher presence. The angels say when you go through hard times, that's an opportunity for learning. It's not always easy. And I'm not saying if something bad happens, you should rejoice because you're learning something. That's not our human nature, but that is our soul nature. That's what we have to take into consideration when we're struggling is, what can I learn from this? It's about learning something. And whether or not you figure it out during this lifetime or not, it will all become clear once you cross over and you see what all was accomplished.
Can't wait.
Kathleen, don't talk like that.
I want to know. I want to know now.
Yikes.
No, I'm good. I can wait.
Okay. All right.
More and more of us are connecting with our guides, with our higher self. And so we're learning stuff and we will continue to learn stuff the rest of our lives. It will just become easier. Eventually, someday, I'm not going to be the oddity that can talk with the angels. More people will be able to do that. And it's very hopeful and it's very helpful.
When you talk about the shift, and that means so many things to different people. I mean, it's a huge, huge topic. One of the things that really stands out for me about the shift, though, is the shift in perspective, which is what we've been talking about all this time, looking at things through a soul lens, through the lens of love and light, if you will. I know it sounds rather trite, and I don't mean it to sound that way.
I say it all the time because that's what it is.
Yes, or you want to say kindness and compassion. Okay, we can go with that. But yeah, that shift in perspective, I know for me personally, once I got that years ago, it made all the difference.
Oh, sure.
It made it possible for me to begin to look at situations and events and people that I had a lot of difficulty with for many reasons. I was able to kind of smooth out those rough edges within myself, begin to heal the parts of me that needed to heal because of my reaction to these, events and people. But it was that shift in perspective that really got the ball rolling. So it's not
Absolutely.
just a energetic shift. I mean, it's also that shift in perspective.
Well, yeah, it's that higher consciousness that's forming. And another thing that is a consequence of the shift is we're building that unity of one, that everyone and everything is connected. And so as that grows, it will be easier to be understanding and forgiving than it has been in the past. So the way the angels put it is when you can see your face in others who are suffering, that's when real change happens. That's what I try to keep in mind. I mean, in myself, I see a huge difference. It started with not getting mad if someone cut me off on the freeway and reminding myself, okay, you're not going there, rise above that. And now it's at the point where if my fear or anger is triggered by either a person or an event or what have you, it helps me. I don't get as upset. I can rise above that and I don't become overwhelmed like I have been in the past. During COVID, I remember wondering, should I buy stuff for survival? Or I mean, you hear all these stories about how there's not going to be any food available. And you can get caught up in that very easily. But when you feel that connection to other people and to whatever higher power to the universe, to the earth, that calms you. And that's why the angels always talk about self-care. You have to put yourself first. And that goes against the grain for us. We're always, I mean, especially healers like we are, or people who really, it's important to help others. I remember when I was struggling as a mother and my husband was sick and all of that, it's so easy to get overwhelmed and it's so easy to put yourself last on your to-do list. And we got to stop doing that. I mean, everyone says, well, if you don't, then you're going to get sick and who's going to take care of them? But it's more than that. It's if you take time to make sure you have what you need to be happy, to be joyful, and to be healthy, then again, it's that energy that spreads to other people and you become a beacon. We're all going through this stuff. We're all going through it. But you'll see people that are scared to death and are locking themselves away from everyone and worried constantly. And then you see people who feel that coming on and put a stop to it. And remember that this is necessary. We're going to be okay. That's what we all need to get in the habit of doing. We got to take care of ourselves because in taking care of ourselves, we take care of everybody around us. It's that building.
Yeah. And beyond what we can even comprehend.
Absolutely.
And what I want to invite all the three of us to do, let's draw a line in the sand right now. And anybody who listens to this, make it your declaration to commit to self-care. Let go of all of those old beliefs, old limiting beliefs that you might have thought or society might have told you about all the reasons you shouldn't focus on yourself. Let it all go. And let this be the moment that you commit to your own self-care. It is so important. You are worthy. You are worth it. And we need you.
Right.
We need you
the world
to take care of you. So let's do it. Let this be the moment.
Let's clarify. That doesn't mean spending a couple $1,000s on a cruise or to a retreat or to a spa, or it doesn't have to cost anything. Just sit down and think to yourself, what brings you joy? For me, lately, that's my granddaughter. She's 4 months old, and every time I pick her up, it's joy. It's pure joy. And so when I'm feeling low, then I make it a point to make time to go see her and spend time with her. or any other number of things. That what the angels clarify is they're not talking about electronics and getting on your phone or playing video games, or they're saying we're talking about the kind of joy that is lasting. It's not that there's anything wrong with electronics or getting caught up in social media or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But that doesn't count as joy, because as soon as you put it down, it's gone, right? They're talking about figuring out what you need to do so that you feel the joy and it stays with you for a while. And that looks different for everybody. Figure out what it is that makes you feel joy and do more of it.
Excellent.
I think true joy is also, it's long lasting, as you said, and you can bring it back just by thinking about those moments that brought you joy. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I would imagine that most people, when they think about working on social media, don't feel a lot of joy. I know I most assuredly do.
I definitely don't.
Maybe there's people out there who do, great.
Yeah,
that's good
that's
for you.
Fine.
Like you, I have a granddaughter, and all I need to do is think about her and the time we've spent together, and I can bring back that joy like this. And it's so wonderful, and it feeds my soul. It puts me in balance. I feel balanced. I feel whole.
That is a great way to put it. That's what we need to work toward, because if we don't, then we're going to be overwhelmed with fear or overwhelmed with dread. Or even my psychic friends who also channel or have some kind of psychic connection. Some of them are feeling, well, I think we're all feeling that something big is happening here. And for some, they believe it's one thing. For some, the others. What I get a lot of impression of is more natural disasters. A lot of people are worried about violence breaking out with all the polarity. I asked the angels about it. They said, well, that's up to you. If there's violence, it's because people are choosing to participate in violence. So the more of you who refuse to participate, the less violence there will be, and the faster we can get to a better place. All of us who are sensitive to energy and have psychic gifts like channeling, we're all feeling that big things are coming to be. And some of the times will be rough. That doesn't mean World War III. It doesn't mean nuclear war. That's not on the agenda. It really isn't. That's why it's so important to stay in a good frame of mind and to stay hopeful and joyous. That will help more than anything else. It will help you and everybody else.
Those ripples that we talked about earlier, right?
Absolutely.
When we are in a state of balance and feeling wellness, that emanates and flows outward. So I think it's important for each of us to find what brings us joy. And I also think it's important for us to spend time in stillness with just ourselves.
I cannot say how important that is. And the angels talk about it all the time. That fits in with finding what brings you joy. In order to know that, you have to spend time with yourself. And so few of us do that. And that is the key. You have to know yourself. You have to know ahead of time that you're not in a good place so that you can fix that. And the more often you check in with yourself, the faster you can head that kind of thing off. It takes time to be with yourself. And when you're feeling that, either do some grounding work or just sit quietly and get to know yourself a little bit. It's so important.
I'm so glad that we are here in the conversation, because in one of your recent articles, Jodie, there was a technique. Everybody's out for techniques, right? Or hacks, give me a hack to do this better or whatever. That's the buzzword lately. And it really struck me because the simplicity, and this came up, I think, earlier in our conversation. I think Kathleen was saying, like, people have to think it has to be so complicated and all of that. And really, it's simple. And I'm wondering, could you share, I think you know what technique I'm talking about. It was the 10 minutes of what everybody can do. And so if you can share that with our audience, I think it would be immensely helpful.
I'll qualify it by saying that different things work for different people. Are you talking about the 10 minutes of quiet or grounding?
Mm-hmm.
Intent is important. So when I say spend 10 minutes with yourself, it's a good idea to have an intention. Sit with yourself quietly and think of an intention. Maybe it's healing the earth. Maybe it's feeling the unity that we're all building. Maybe it's how am I feeling and what do I need to do about that? You can set whatever intention you want to do. Recently, I invited everyone to join me every evening for 10 minutes, think of healing the earth. And so that was an invitation I made, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be whatever you want it to be and whatever you need. And everybody has different needs and different ways to do it. I mentioned grounding. To me, that's thinking of the earth and feeling part of the earth and exchange of energy with the earth and with others. It's different for everyone, but just take 10 minutes a day for yourself. For whatever reason you want. Maybe it's spending time with your granddaughter. Maybe it's just feeling the energy around, but just 10 minutes a day to spend with yourself. That's all it takes to really make a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about literally changing the world here. If
Right.
everybody spent 10 minutes, that's it. And what I meant too, when I brought this up, was how incredible it is, because every single person has 10 minutes. Every single person can do this. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to have certain credentials. There's no bar. There's no threshold. It is 10 minutes. Just set a timer or look at the clock, whatever. And it is 10 minutes. That is what got me so excited. And I've said it before and, I'll say it again, but that's one of the reasons I love Reiki, because anybody can learn it. There's no, it's not a special club. And I think probably that's why this spoke to me, because we all can do 10 minutes.
And for some people, that will be prayer. For some people, meditation. For some people, a walk in nature. I mean, it can be anything, but just that 10 minutes to yourself. Take a self-inventory. What do you need? And make sure you get it. It's very important, and it goes beyond you. It adds something to the earth and to everyone on it. So very important.
I'm glad you brought that up, Andrea. I read that article too, and I thought that was really interesting. And as Andrea said, so easy. It didn't cost anything. You didn't have to go anywhere or learn anything.
You're right. People are looking for a step-by-step. Okay. You mentioned anyone can do Reiki. Well, anyone can channel. You just have to find that avenue that works for you. I mean, I'm not any smarter. I'm not any more gifted. I'm not any more loved. In my case, this was part of my life plan. So it was always going to happen. And some people are like that, but anyone can do that. There's no step-by-step process to get where you want to go, to grow spiritually. I just wrote an article and posted it last night. There's no one thing that works for everyone. I used to get so frustrated when I'd read books and they'd say, well, you have to get out of your own way. Okay, what does that mean? And I get people all the time asking me, what do I have to do? Well, I can't answer that. You have to find your own answers and what works for you. And you can, but you have to dedicate some time. And there is no checklist. Okay, did I do this? Did I do, it's very different. Everyone can reach this point, and more people will, but it's many, many paths to choose from to get where you want to go.
Yeah. I wonder if we can talk just a moment too about maybe the not so love and light aspects of the topic. One of the things that came to mind while we were talking, this has got to really be challenging, I think, this shift for relationships that people have, especially committed relationships. If we think of marriage, marriage is a human construct. It's pretty ancient, goes back a long time. So and it's often called an institution. So that's kind of interesting. I have to imagine a lot of people out there are experiencing the shift and the new perspectives and all of that and the energy, not on the same trajectory, maybe, as their partners.
Absolutely true. And I get a lot of emails and questions about that. What everyone needs to understand is everyone is on their own path. Everyone is on their own timeline. And it has caused stress in many relationships, not just marriage, but lots of relationships.
Right.
Because you've progressed further than whoever you're in a relationship with. Sometimes you can adjust, and sometimes you need a break, and sometimes you just need to grin and bear it. It's really up to you how you handle that. But it's a very common issue right now because people progress at their own speed. And when you're all of a sudden noticing all these things and feeling all this energy and you know what's going on, and your partner or your friend or your parent has no clue, when you question your religious beliefs that you had all your life and decide that that's not working for you anymore, everyone else who's not where you're at is wondering, what in the world happened to my friend or my wife or husband or mother or, so it does cause a lot of stress. But you just got to remind yourself, we progress at our own rate. We all have our own life plans, and things will happen when they're supposed to happen. And then all serves a purpose.
Yeah. And maybe it's part of the life plan. We have a tendency to say the relationship failed, but maybe it isn't a failure at all. I mean, why label it that way?
Well, the angels have said sometimes you take different paths and they're not together. They'll probably end up in the same place, more or less, but completely different paths. We got to quit saying, well, I wish everyone would hurry up and get here into the fifth dimension mindset, because that just makes it harder. That's more of that negative energy out there. You just have to sit back and do your own thing, take care of yourself, and help where you can. Don't judge. We're all on our own path, and we have to find patience for each other. If that means ending a relationship, that makes room for a different relationship that maybe is more comfortable. And just the energetic differences sometimes are causing problems, because if you are vibrating at a higher frequency than someone that you used to be the same frequency at a lower frequency, then that feels funny sometimes. It's kind of like, Andrea, when you were saying it's getting used to the difference, the change, and sometimes that can be uncomfortable. So it could be an energetic reason why things don't seem comfortable anymore.
Yeah, because all relationships are based on energy, are they not?
Everything is based on energy.
Of course, just like everything else. So people are brought together because of energies that are compatible. That's the word I like to use. Because that word just works for me. But there comes a time when some relationships, one person goes in one direction, the other person maybe stays where they are. It starts to become harder and harder to find common ground, to communicate. And what I've seen happen is that eventually the energies of each individual become incompatible with each other.
That happens.
And it does. And at that point, the relationship, whatever it may be, sort of falls away. It's not a failure. It's an energetic shift. There's that word again. I've had friends that I no longer have, and there's no hard feelings there.
That's what I was going to say. It doesn't have to be painful or hurtful or mean or an argument
Not
of
at
any
all.
kind.
No.
It's just people change, and some change together and some change differently and separately.
Exactly. So yeah, it's so important. I think we need to keep that energy factor in mind because it is the main component. It is the component of everything.
It really is. I mean, everything is made of energy. Like energy attracts like energy. That's why if you're at a much higher frequency now than you used to be, there's the discomfort there because different energies don't attract. Energy looks for energy that's similar to it. That's why it's so important to be positive going forward and to not engage in these arguments going on. And that energy that grows if you join into it. So you have to kind of rise above that. It helps your own cause if you don't argue with their cause. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
it does.
Yes. So on social media, it's called scroll on by.
Yeah,
scroll
good
on
old social
by.
media.
Good advice.
Be aware of how you feel. That's real important. You can do that in that 10 minutes we talked about. How are you feeling today? And why are you feeling that way? And what can you do to fix it if it's not a good place to be? That's very important. And you need to be aware of yourself. That's why I say, spend 10 minutes a day with yourself because a lot of times we don't know ourselves.
Yeah. And I want to just interject real quickly and say, and please set the judgment aside because we all have days where we're in the dumps. It does no good to blame ourselves or say, man, I've been so high vibrational or whatever you might say to yourself. And now I'm not, and I feel disconnected. What's wrong with me? How do I get back there? And, what do I have to do? All of that. And thinking from the energy perspective that we've been on, energy is a wave.
Fluctuates. Yes.
And energy has ups and downs. I mean, just think of the sine wave, back from, geometry or whatever. But yeah, it has high points and lower points, and we're just energy. And again, we need the contrast so that we better know who we are and we better can refine our understandings. And so I really do want to invite the listeners to be kind to themselves when they just don't feel at their best. They're not feeling the joy. It's okay.
So many of us are compassionate to others, but we forget to be compassionate and kind to ourselves. That goes back to that 10 minutes a day. Be kind to yourself. Whatever you feel you have done incorrectly, the angels would tell you, don't worry about it. You're forgiven for whatever mistakes. Now you have to forgive yourself. That's so important. If you don't do that, it catches up to you. That's back again to the 10 minutes. I know I sound like a broken record. And sometimes my articles do too, because the angels will come through with the message that they've said many times, but their point is it bears repeating because it's that important. That's why if you stay on top of things in terms of how you're feeling, it's so much easier to get back to where you want to be if you haven't fallen below that frequency very far. It's like gaining weight or losing weight. It's so much easier to lose 10 pounds than 100 pounds.
That's right.
Just stay on top of it. Be aware of yourself and how you're feeling.
That's so important. Oh, Jodie, as always, it's so wonderful speaking with you, and the time flies when we do this. But I have a question for you, one final question before we say adieu. What do the angels have to say, if anything, about what we need to do in preparing for the new year and saying goodbye to 2022? Can you enlighten us a bit?
Sure. They say a few things. They say, identify your gifts. What are you naturally good at? Because your gifts are tied to your purpose and into the life plan. So know what you're good at naturally, and then ask yourself how you can use that gift to be helpful. That's one thing. And as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be anything huge. I'm a very nurturing person. When I see someone is upset, it bothers me, and I try to offer some kind of comfort. That's nothing huge. It didn't cost any money. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it's that kindness factor. It can do so much. So know your gifts and identify something that is not working for you, whether it's a government policy, a law, or a system, or whatever it is, and ask yourself, how can you use your gifts to work on a solution? So it's not anyone telling you what you need to work on and how you need to work on it. It's figuring out what's important to you and what you can do to help. That's a big thing about coming into the new year. Another thing they suggest is to ask yourself, and Lee Harris says this. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's another channel. He's great. And he channeled a message that said, define who you are now, and then picture who you want to be 1 year from now. Instead of coming up with a list of New Year's resolution, if you're going to do that, at least make it know yourself better and be kinder, get involved, that kind of thing. That's what they suggest going into a new year. Be in tune with yourself. Don't become overwhelmed when that starts to happen. Identify it and work on it right then before you get carried away, which is easy to do these days.
It is. It is. That is wonderful advice.
It is. And there's a theme there. It's all about the individual. Self-care.
It really is.
It's not about, go out and, make a splash in the world and do something that's going to help somebody like in a huge way. No, start with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. That's so much more powerful than people realize. We have a bad tendency as human beings to think we're not enough or to think we're insignificant. I'm just me. What do I have to offer? But that's just not true. You don't have to do anything if you are aware of yourself and your energy rises to a higher frequency. You don't have to do anything except take care of yourself to make a big difference.
And words to live by, Jodie. That's wonderful. It really is. And very comforting. Very comforting.
We're all beings of light. We all chose to be here at this time so we could help through this. And for some, that means action. For some, that means energy. For some, that means not judging. And for others, it means causing more problems so that we can join together and fix the problems.
That's right. Yes. So well said. So well put and illustrated, Jodie. I just want to echo what Kathleen said. We just always love to have you here with us. And
it's always a pleasure.
And let's remind our listeners how they might engage with you and find out more about you after the show.
Well, as you mentioned, I write a lot on medium.com. It's a writing platform, and I have quite a following there. I usually post at least 5 articles a week. And Sometimes it's based on their questions, sometimes on mine, sometimes just an overall feel of what's going on. She mentioned I'm working on a book. I am. I may self-publish because to find an agent has really been a challenge, but it's getting there. It's going to happen. So as soon as it does, I'll let you guys know. You can also email me at asktheangels222@gmail.com. If you have questions, be happy to help you if I can.
Beautiful. And yeah, you'll even ask the angels on behalf of some of the questions you receive. And
I do that all the time. Yeah. And people ask me all the time, do you do consultations? Do you do private appointments? I always answer, this is not my business. I'm not making a living this way, although there's nothing wrong with making a living that way. I don't charge to help people in this way. It just doesn't feel right to me. But if I can help, I certainly will. I don't do it privately except through email. I suppose you could you could consider that privately. And I can't get all of the questions you may have answered, but what I can do, I'll be happy to do that.
So generous, Jodie.
That it's that oneness, it's that connection that we all have. And eventually we're all going to have that attitude. It's going to bother us if someone isn't doing well. We're going to want to help them. And what a world that will be.
Oh, yes. We'll have links in the show notes so everybody can connect with you that way and find your email address down there as well. And thanks so much again.
Thank you. And happy holidays to y'all and all of your listeners. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jodie. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. Take good care.
We thank you again for joining us. And of course, we invite you to join us next time as we journey beyond the Reiki Gateway with Kathleen Johnson and Andrea Kennedy.